Yes, that same meeting, we came up with this idea. So just a real quick story. About 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, I was connected with the sleep doctor, Dr. Michael Breus, via a mutual friend. And we met a couple of times virtually, and he wanted me to look at a course, kind of vet a course, give him some feedback on it. So I went through it, and it was amazing. My life changed, like literally, it changed. Night and day. I made a bunch of changes in my house. I made a bunch of changes in my lifestyle. I quit drinking coffee first thing in the morning, first time in my life. And sleep was completely different. I was insomniac. I couldn't stay asleep. I couldn't get to sleep. How many of you got the email about this and took the chronotype quiz? All right, I see a lot of hands. Okay, so I'm not going to take away from what Dr. Breus is going to talk about today, but if you did, you recall there are 4 chronotypes, right? Bear, lion, dolphin, and wolf. And I'm a lion. Just, hey, lions? Anybody? Lions? Yeah, give it up. The lions are the best, by the way. But in this book and this course, it shares with you, based on your chronotype, a lot of things such as how many hours sleep you should get. What is the best time of day to focus? What is the best time of day to be creative? What is the best time of day to work out? And what is the best time to, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody. I swear it's in there. So with that, I want to thank the man who saved my marriage, the sleep doctor, Dr. Michael Breus. Hey everyone. How's everybody doing today? So I would say that I could be a marriage counselor because I have definitely saved more marriages as a sleep specialist than I think I would have ever done as a marital therapist. Just getting 2 people back in bed together. Usually that has something to do with this loud cacophonous noise that is presented by usually the male of the couple. That's called snoring. By the way, for anybody who sleeps next to a snoring bed partner, you lose approximately 1 hour of sleep every single night. There's a lot of data to show this. So when we're talking about people who snore, there's a lot of different things we want to think about. Want to tell you guys, I'm going to go at not a blistering pace, but I'm going to teach you guys a ton of information. You are welcome to take pictures of any of my slides, but I'm going to make the slides available to the Rex team, so I don't want you having to worry about that. So if you want the slides, you just let them know, and we'll make sure that you guys get them. Also, at the very end, I'm going to give my phone number and my private email in case you have a question that you don't feel like asking in front of 200 people. I'm happy to answer any questions for you about stuff like that. I'm going to go through teaching people some of the language of what is sleep, how does it work. Then I'm going to go into these things called chronotypes. Like we noticed, a few people, thankfully, took the quiz. And then I'm going to teach you how does exercise affect sleep and how does sleep affect exercise, because I wanted to do something that was really pertinent to the field in which you guys all are, but at the same time, there's a lot about leadership in this. Sleepy leaders are not good leaders. Let's just be very honest about that. And when we've all been sleepy and leading, we kind of know that, right? Because we're really not at our best in many different ways. But before we get to that, let's talk about sleep. So it turns out that sleep is based on 2 distinct systems in the brain. One is called your sleep drive. The other is called your sleep rhythm. Drive is a lot like hunger. I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I eat something and then that hunger begins to dissipate. The same holds true with sleep, right? But it actually happens in a very biochemical way. So, when a cell eats a piece of glucose, something comes out the back end. One of those things is called adenosine. Adenosine works its way through your system and goes to a very specific receptor site area in your brain, okay? As adenosine accumulates, you get sleepier and sleepier and sleepier. Now, as a sleep researcher and as a sleep doctor and seeing patients for 25 years, I like to kind of nerd out on sleep-related stuff. So a long time ago, I was looking at the molecular structure of adenosine, this sleep-inducing hormone that we have inside of our brains. And I compared it to caffeine. It's off by 1 molecule. Isn't that fascinating? The internal substance that our brain makes that helps us fall asleep is literally 1 molecule different than the external substance that a lot of us pour into our mouths hoping to wake up, right? Very interesting when you start to look at that. A little bit later on in the talk, I'm going to give everyone here a hack where you can use caffeine and sleep together in a very unique way. Don't worry, I'll get there. We've talked a little bit about sleep drive. What's sleep rhythm? Sleep rhythm is your circadian rhythm, right? And so also like hunger, you ever notice you're hungry around breakfast time, around lunchtime, and around dinner time, right? That's your circadian rhythm for hunger. So when your circadian rhythm is on point and your sleep drive is high, you sleep. But if either one of these is off, that's when you have a sleep disorder, or what I call disordered sleep. So when you start to look around at these two things, once you start to understand those two mechanisms, the drive and the rhythm, everything gets much, much easier. I'm using multiple hands. I'm going to grab water in a second. We'll see if I can coordinate all of this at once. So this is what's called a hypnogram. So in sleep science, this is how we represent sleep across an entire evening. I'm going to hop down. It's better if I do it this way. So when you look at this, you'll notice from these slides, all the way to the right in the orange, that's wake. Next is a light gray, that's stages 1 and 2 sleep, what we call light sleep. Then you notice we dip down into a darker blue, that's called stage 3, 4, or deep sleep. And then we go into REM sleep, which is represented by those light blue bars. Now there's two things I want you to understand about this slide. Number one is you'll notice that deep sleep is front-loaded, right? It's at the beginning of the night, okay? So whoever invented sleep decided that something has to happen. Well, we all kind of have an idea who invented sleep, right? But we have an idea something important has got to happen at the beginning of the night. So what is stage 3, 4? This is your physical restoration. This is your wake up and feel great sleep, okay? You're probably wondering right now, where the heck has that been for the last 10 years? Because I'm kind of waiting on that, right? But here's the thing that we know. This is all physical restoration. Blood pressure drop, respiration slows. Something called growth hormone is emitted. Now, for all of you folks in the fitness industry, my guess is almost all of you know about growth hormone. Because growth hormone is one of those hormones that helps you grow. And in the fitness industry, that's kind of what you want to have doing. So when you're talking with clients, when you're talking with your leaders, when you're talking with people in your industry, this is the stage of sleep that is incredibly important to fitness and to exercise, okay? Now, wouldn't it be great if we could just get stage 3, 4 sleep all the time? It doesn't really work that way. We also have another stage of sleep that's very important called REM sleep. Stands for rapid eye movement, not the band in Athens. It's my best joke, really. I went to the University of Georgia. I am a Bulldog, so I lived in Athens, so I know it. But REM sleep is the mental restoration, okay? So what we've learned fairly recently is this is the stage of sleep where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. Kind of like putting the information, I used to say from a floppy disk to a hard drive. That really shows my age now. I think it's a thumb drive to the cloud, might be a better analogy these days. But this is where your brain creates an organizational substructure, right, for information. So think of it like a filing cabinet. So REM sleep takes information and puts it into that filing cabinet so you can retrieve it later and remember how to do things like ride a bike, drive a car, remember your spouse's birthday, or even take on new information that happens to be coming in during the day. Now, there's another factor in the physical sleep that I forgot to mention, but I do want to mention it now, and that's that there's something called the lymphatic system that was recently discovered, I'd say within the last 12 to 15 years. Somebody actually, I think, almost won a Nobel Prize for it. And here's what's so fascinating is during stage 3, 4 sleep, remember this is your physical restoration sleep, in the beginning of the night sleep, something called the lymphatic system comes in and it's sort of the waste management system for the brain. So it comes in and it scoops out all of these proteins that have been built up during the day. There are 2 proteins that you don't want in your brain. One of them is called beta amyloid, the other is called tau. Okay? When those two, one of them will wrap around the nerve endings and has these little tendrils, like almost like an octopus, and the other one just kind of comes in and it sits on it. What ends up happening is when these wrap around nerve endings, that's called Alzheimer's disease. Right. So now everybody's ears perked up. Now everybody kind of knows and understands what we're talking about here. So if you don't get enough stage 3, 4 sleep, The waste system doesn't come in and scoop out all the junk, and you get to start fresh the next day. So sleep's really important. if I hadn't mentioned that already. Now, when we think about sleep, and people always ask me all the time, well, what happens if you don't get enough sleep, Michael? And why do we sleep? A colleague of mine, Matthew Walker, wrote a book, Why We Sleep. I'm not sure he answered the question, right? Because we don't know. We have no idea why we sleep. We know it's multifactorial. We know that it does all these different things. But what we really know a lot about is what happens when we don't sleep. So if you take a look at this, what happens when we don't sleep? So number one, our brain is off kilter. I mean, a sleepy leader is definitely not a leader, right? We have far greater irritability, memory lapses, increased stress, lack of focus. You got any team members who have that going on? I bet you do. They're probably not sleeping too well. What happens in the gut? We see an impaired immune system. What happens in the heart? We see decreased heart rate variability. Remember, that's kind of a new metric that a lot of people are using, and you want that number to be up, not down. We also see a risk of stroke and risk of heart disease when people are sleep deprived. And then finally, the muscles aren't doing anything that we want them to do. We're seeing aches, we're seeing atrophy, we're seeing increased reaction time. The more you sleep, literally every organ system and every disease state is affected by sleep. Literally everything you do, you would do better with a good night's rest. Now the question is, how much of that do I need, Michael? Well, it's going to be based on a whole host of things. But I want to be super clear. 8 hours is a myth. Let me say that one more time. 8 hours is a myth. I'm the sleep doctor, and I go to bed around midnight, and I get up around 6:30. Okay? And I'm the sleep doctor. All right? So anybody in here who's getting 6.5 hours of sleep, if you wake up and you still feel good and you can do all the things you can do, maybe that's your number instead of 8. Now, I was talking with one young woman earlier, and she was like, 8's my number, I gotta get 8. That's awesome. Go for it. I don't have that kind of time, and to be fair, my body didn't require it. I'll sleep until my body wakes up, but my body wakes up on a very regular schedule. I'm going to teach you why I do that and how you can actually use that to your advantage. But as a general guideline, here's what we see. Itty-bitty kids need lots of sleep. Surprise, surprise. Adults need less. We're looking at somewhere between 7 and 9 hours is kind of the average that we're sort of looking for with folks. But look, if you get 7 and you're still tired, get a little bit more. But here's the other thing that a lot of people don't seem to take into consideration is, what about the quality of my sleep, right? Like, it's not just minutes. It's about what goes on during those minutes. Do I get to those deep stages? Do I get to REM sleep? Do I fall asleep quickly? What happens if I wake up in the middle of the night, Michael, and I can't fall back to sleep? By the way, how many people in here have that issue? Wake up in the middle of the night, can't fall back to sleep, or are up for at least an hour or two? All right, we'll answer that question in just a second. So what messes up people's quality sleep? Well, sleep disorders do. Okay, and so one of the things that most people don't really think about is that they could potentially have a sleep disorder. I'm sure you're not aware of this. There are 88 different sleep disorders out there. I didn't know you could mess up sleep that many ways, but in fact you can. I think in my 25-year career, I've actually seen all 88 across a long span and working in many different types of clinics. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know is there's a single physical marker for probably the biggest sleep disorder out there called sleep apnea. So for folks out there who are not familiar with what sleep apnea is, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit in a second, this is a situation where somebody's throat collapses onto itself and they can't breathe. This happens only when they're asleep, and it'll last for anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds, and then they wake up and they and then they fall right back to sleep, and they usually can't even remember that it's occurred. 95% of sleep centers in the United States are apnea shops. That's what they treat. Why is it that way? It's a good business to be in. Okay? Why is it a good business to be in? It's a diagnosable test. I can stick a machine on you. I can make you pay for that machine for infinity, and you're good. Now, is that good medicine? Sometimes it is. A lot of times it's not. So what's ended up happening is a lot of people, when they get diagnosed for sleep apnea, they say, I'm not wearing a CPAP machine, and then they don't do anything. We're going to talk about a lot of the different options that are out there, but I want to tell you about something that every single person in here can utilize in their organization today that has to do with sleep apnea, which is if you know somebody who has over a 17.5-inch neck. Most men know what their collar sizes are because we wear, shirts, collars, and ties and things like that. If you have over a 17.5-inch neck as a male, you have an 83% chance of having sleep apnea. 83%. That's 4 out of 5 people, right, with a 17.5-inch neck. So these are not tough people to spot, but they are tough people sometimes to convince that they may have something going on with their sleep. And sleep apnea is a big reason why people have low quality sleep. Obviously, there are a lot of other different sleep disorders that are out there, but sleep apnea is the one that seems to really capture most of the media these days. But what I like to focus in on is not necessarily the sleep disorders, because to be quite honest with you, there are about 6,000 sleep doctors in the United States. They all do that, all of it, just like I do. There's nothing particularly special about me when it comes to some of those things, although insomnia is my area of specialty, and that is one of the areas I'm most known for. I like to look at what I call disordered sleep. So you don't have apnea, you don't have narcolepsy, but you wake up and you feel like crap. Like, what's that, Michael? How do I fix that? Like, I'm getting 6, 7 hours, and I think I'm doing all the right stuff, yet for some reason, it's not working. I'm not getting the quality of sleep that I'm looking for. I think I have some unique solutions for you, but these are the areas that I like to play in. Fatigue, restlessness, daytime sleepiness, and when people are not sleeping within something called their chronotype. Now, what is a chronotype? So you guys took a quiz, and you're probably saying, I got a spirit animal, or somebody's probably thinking Dorothy, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. How many people? I usually get that one. So here's the deal, is when you go to sleep, melatonin, which is in this light blue, it's a little bit difficult to see, rises, and cortisol falls. And the opposite occurs when you're awake. Cortisol is up, and melatonin is down. But here's the thing, not everybody's schedule is the same. It turns out, genetically speaking, you have a unique sleep schedule. I can show you how to find it. And if you sleep within your swim lane, like the schedule that I tell you about, I might be able to actually add about an hour to an hour and a half back into your day. Does that sound like something anybody would potentially be interested in? So I'll tell you the story of how I did this. So I wrote a book called The Power of When. I was learning about chronotypes. I had a patient that I absolutely failed on. I couldn't fix her no matter what I tried. She came in, we were talking about it, and she said, this is when I was practicing on the East Coast. I started my practice in Georgia. I now live in Los Angeles here. And she said, if I could just live on LA time, my life would be great. I said, say that again. She said, if I could just live 3 hours later than what's going on the East Coast, my life would be fantastic. She's like, I could get up at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. I would work until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Like, that's kind of my vibe. And I was like, well, why don't you do that? And she said, because I'm getting fired at the end of the week. I said, what happened? She said, well, we've tried everything. I keep falling asleep at meetings. My work product isn't going over very well. Like, it's an issue. And so I said, well, can I call your boss and ask your boss if you can come in 2 hours late and stay 2 hours late? She was like I said, Michael, I think I'm getting fired. So this was on a Tuesday. I called him up. I said, hey, can so-and-so come in 2 hours later and stay 2 hours later? He says, I don't really care what she does. I'm firing her at the end of the week. Like, no shit. I'm firing her at the end of the week. Right? I'm like, oh, no pressure, Michael, no pressure. So I'm like, all right, we'll figure this out. So I switched her around, and all I did was have her sleep 2 hours later and work 2 hours later. We cleared it with her family because she had things that she would do in the morning time, and she wanted to clear it with them to make sure. I called the boss on Friday. First words out of his mouth, I have 3 more employees for you. That was interesting, right? When I called the house to tell her that she got to keep the job, her husband grabbed the phone. And he said something to me that was really interesting. He said, thank you for giving me my wife back. When you're sleepy and you're not feeling good, you're not yourself in any shape or form. No matter what relationship you have, if you hadn't slept well the night before or for several nights before, or maybe you have a sleep disorder, you're definitely taking it out on people around you, whether that's co-workers, colleagues, whether that's family, kids, dogs, who knows? But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there who aren't sleeping too well. So let's take a look at exercise and biology of sleep deprivation, because this is kind of interesting. When you start to look at people becoming sleep deprived, how does that affect their performance from an exercise perspective? Well, number one, they have decreased glycogen storage with less stage 3 and 4. Remember, less stage 3 and 4. That ain't good. That's the stuff that gets the Alzheimer's out. That's the stuff that gets the growth hormone in, right? So sleep deprivation, when we're losing stage 3 and 4, we're also losing glycogen storage. Less overall REM sleep for the guys and even the gals, less testosterone, right? So what ends up happening when you sleep less than 5 hours? You have an 11% reduction in testosterone. That's pretty interesting. So if any of you guys happen to have a gym or work at a gym or work out at a gym, and you need a little bit of extra oomph, I can assure you that if you ain't sleeping, you probably don't have it. Less sleep causes hormonal response, which can actually cause depletions of these things called cytokines. This is for the inflammatory process. So when any organ, muscle, tissue inflames, cytokines are something that the body creates to send in, almost like white blood cells. They're kind of like a type. And we see a significant reduction in those as well. Oh, is it not going to work? There we go. What happens with behavior? So there's data to suggest that reaction time triples when you're sleep deprived. So has anybody been watching the combines the last couple of days? Right? I've been watching those guys are fast, right? I mean, and when you see, for folks who don't know what the combines are, these are tryouts for the National Football League from Division I football players. They go to these places and they do all these crazy tests, right? So when you start to think about it, if your reaction time is getting longer, not shorter, that's a problem. So I've worked with several Olympic athletes, and I can assure you that being on the podium or being off the podium is based on their night of sleep the night before the race or match. Because by the time you get to the Olympic level, everybody's amazing. They're off by hundredths of a second in different areas. I've worked with Formula One drivers, I've worked with gymnasts, I've worked with golfers, I've worked with snowboarders. They're all the same. If you can get the night of sleep that you need before, you're going to make it through no problem. Decreased eye-hand coordination has actually been directly linked to sleep deprivation. So what about injury in your gyms, right? What about people pulling muscles or not having good form, right? What happens when you're tired? You don't have good form, you hurt yourself. Now we've got liability. That's a whole different ball of wax to start to unveil. So reaction time. Here's my typical reaction times. So what we're seeing here is, again, nearly triples. This is actually about the same as somebody being legally drunk, right? So again, when we're looking at performance and performance data, sleep deprivation is literally cutting it in so many different ways, it's kind of a mess. Again, testosterone, we know that this has a very big effect. And so the way I think about it is basically you're taking a 22-year-old NBA or WNBA player and, more NBA. And so when the testosterone is down, that's like a 32-year-old player, right? So only guy I know that's that old and really kicking ass these days is LeBron. There's a couple of guys that are that old, but at the end of the day, they all have very specific sleep regimens, because they have to be game ready, right? Match ready, whatever it happens to be. This is another area that a lot of people don't think about, but I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, which is sleep and learning. So when you're teaching somebody how to do something, if they don't get a good night's sleep, they don't remember how to do the thing you taught them, right? So this falls across every aspect of your business, right? This is your marketing department, this is your sales department, this is the trainers, this is the purchasers, this is the vendors. Everybody has this as an effect, right? If you don't sleep after you learn, you really never will. Why? first aspect is what seems to happen with sleep is basically rehearsal. Then the second aspect is the brain sort of files that away. And then the second part is integrating those facts and lessons into existing knowledge. That's how they keep it. So when you have a course that you're teaching, maybe it's a new software, maybe it's new policies, maybe it's new procedures, whatever it is that's going on, whether it's for your clients or your staff, if they don't get a good night's rest after you teach this to them, they have almost no memory for it, right? So that, again, becomes an issue within your business. So this was one of the most interesting studies that I saw. It was very specific. So this looks at sleep maintaining muscle mass while you're losing weight. So there's a lot of people now who are trying to do this. I'm going to get all of my, 1 gram of protein per body weight at a caloric deficit. So I'm going to keep losing weight while trying to maintain my muscle, because that's kind of one of the big things that's going on these days. University of Chicago study showed researchers divided their overweight, middle-aged, non-smoking participants into groups. One that got 8.5 hours of sleep and one that got 5.5 hours of sleep. For the next 14 days, the groups stuck to the same diet. The group that slept 8+ hours per night had more energy and decreased appetite. They lost 55% more fat and retained 60% more muscle mass. I mean, that's like the best study ever for what I'm trying to say, right? So if you can get your clients sleeping, they will stay. Why? Because they're gonna get results. It's the easiest hack possible. Every time that I get a work with a group of physicians, the first thing I say to them is give me all of the patients where the treatment doesn't work, or they've stopped taking the meds, or they've quit. Because I can almost bet you they've got a sleep disorder, and once we fix the sleep disorder, we can motivate them enough to get them to continue treatment. Because that's really what you guys are doing, is you're creating a protocol treatment to have people be able to reach their goals, right? I mean, I've been working out since I've been, 14 years old. I'm a daily gym guy. And so in order for me to keep coming back, I gotta get results. The easiest way for people to get results is to just get some sleep. You'll see it increase the weights on the machines, on the barbells. I mean, you'll see a faster run time on the treadmills. Whatever the goal is, it doesn't matter, it's there. So how does sleep benefit exercise? Believe it or not, there's a ton of different ways. So we know that people have quicker recovery time when they sleep. They have increased aerobic endurance. So if you're a yoga person, a cardio person, I think I talked to somebody here who has a spin studio, like those are the things that are going to be helpful. Improved speed, accuracy, you actually allows for a greater exertion during a workout. So people, not only are they getting there, but they're actually working out harder than they normally would have if they get a decent night's sleep. Now, also, by the way, another big factor is it definitely lowers the risk of injury. How does exercise benefit sleep? Well, it extends sleep time. It increases the time spent in deep sleep. Remember, that's the most physically restorative sleep. If you learn one thing from my talk today, it's that you want to improve your deep sleep, okay? Because that's really where the physicality of it is all going to lie. Reduces stress and enhances overall sleep quality. The single biggest thing you can do for your body, whether it's nutrition, whether it's exercise, I promise you, is sleep. So what we're looking at here is a balance, okay? I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not an exercise physiologist or a kinesiologist. I don't claim to know that whole universe. That's what you guys all and gals all do. But what I can tell you is if sleep is out of balance, those other things are out of balance as well. So how do we get them in balance? So how many people here were a lion? Lions? So lions, you are a very unique group, okay? Most people, quite frankly, they don't really love you guys. Because you have a tendency to wake up about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. You're usually waking your bed partner up. You're probably sending out an email to somebody by 5 a.m. Most of your staff is not too pleased to be getting it. And you guys are go-getters. You're leaders. A lot of times you're COOs, not necessarily CEOs. Like my lions are my go, 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 drive people. They're the people that just get shit done. It's great, but they don't actually do the work. They're really good at managing people and looking at big picture stuff. And a lot of people really want to be a lion. Believe it or not, people came up to me and they said they have lion envy, right? Like, who doesn't want to be the king or queen of the jungle, right? But I'm here to tell you, being a lion isn't all it's cracked up to be, okay? I'm not going to pick on any of my lions here, but my guess is for most of the lions here, dinner and a movie is out, right? Because they're waking up at 4:30 in the morning. Come on. Like, they're not staying up to see Dune, which was 3 hours, by the way. I saw it the other day. It was pretty awesome. So if anybody out there is a sci-fi fan, check it out. Zendaya is amazing. Anyway, we'll keep going. So what I was able to do once I understood people's chronotypes is I was able to actually map their hormones. So the whole reason I'm going to tell you all this stuff about chronotypes is because there are about 4 different chronotypes. Now, I want to be clear, I did not discover chronotypes. They've been around since the 70s. Actually, much early, chronotypes have been around since the dawn of time, but they've been studied since the 70s. And what I was able to do was I was able to find a 4th chronotype. So everybody's heard of the early bird, that's the lion, right? Some people have heard of the night owl, I call them wolves. And then people in the middle, which we used to call hummingbirds, I have no idea why, just call them hummingbirds. Those people in the middle are called bears. Now, to be fair, when I came up with this distinction, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. These were avatars when I was writing the book. Because I knew there were categories of people, but I'm like, what are people going to really resonate to? Like, when you're sitting there writing a book and your publisher is like, come on, Michael, what should every person be? So one person said, everybody should be a color. Please. Everybody should be a crystal. That was really California, let me tell you. As you can tell, I'm not exactly from here. But I said I wanted them to be animals because I'm a mammal. I'm not a bird, right? I want it to be something that I can kind of relate to. So here's the interesting thing. Turns out nobody wants to be a porcupine. Not very inspirational, right? So I had to find animals that actually fit the chronotypes that they represent and were ones that people liked. So lions are my early birds. How many people in here were a bear? Should have been a majority of people. Wow, we didn't get a lot of people taking the quiz, did we? We need to work on this. Chronoquiz.com, all right? Just check it out. So bears are folks in the middle, and by the way, it's the best to be a bear. I really wish I was a bear. The reason bears are the best is because genetically speaking, the 9 to 5 schedule works perfect for them. The entire society works perfect for them. Let me take a step back and let me go back into ancient history and tell you about the chronotypes of ancient history. So if you were in a tribe in ancient history and there were hunters, the hunters were the lions. They went out before dawn, they got their first kill, they brought it back to the village. Who were the people who tended the village? Those were the bears, right? Those are the people that are up at the regular time, feeding, building, all of those different things. Who were the sentries? Who was the security? Well, those were the wolves. Those were the night owls. They were up anyway. They might as well be standing there with a spear and a shield, right? So these have been around for a significant period of time. Now, you're also probably wondering, well, can you prove that you're a chronotype or can you prove that I'm a chronotype? It's genetic. I can go into your 23andMe or your Ancestry.com and I can look exactly at your genome and I can tell you exactly what your chronotype is. And with that information, I can also tell you if you're born to have good quality sleep, medium quality sleep, or poor quality sleep. With that information, I can tell you how long your body needs to sleep. I'm literally the only guy I know who does genetic testing on all of my patients because that way I can get a really good understanding for what's happening with them. Wolves, that's me, by the way. I've been a wolf for most of my adult life until I turned about 52, 53. I'm 56 now. And I started going backwards. So you ever notice how grandma and grandpa want to have dinner at 4:30? That'd be me. That's happening to me. I'm going backwards. It's because my melatonin production is going backwards. So what's really going on here? It's about when does your body release melatonin first. So for my lion, your body releases melatonin about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Your body heats up, you wake up, you're off and moving. For anybody out here who was a bear, your body is still making melatonin at that time. Your body's making melatonin until about 6:30, and then you're waking up around 7:30. If you're a wolf like me, I hate the morning. I don't like mornings. I don't like morning people. They're just too damn chipper, right? I'm not that guy. I'm sleeping until 7:30, 8 o'clock if I could, right? And then staying up late. There's a fourth one. And this is the one that I discovered, and this is the one that I think is the most interesting. And I call them dolphins. Now you might be wondering, well, why did you choose dolphins? I mean, everything else is like, right? So dolphins are really interesting because they sleep unihemispherically. So half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators. So I thought that feels like my insomniacs, right? So dolphins are the people who are a lot like lions, but have very erratic sleep schedules. They're usually self-diagnosed as being an insomniac. They tend to be obsessive compulsive, so they've got a little bit of anxiety, like their projects are never quite perfect. You all know exactly who I'm talking about, don't you? Right? It's either you or it's somebody in your circle, right? But these people don't sleep well at all. In fact, they only have 4 sleep cycles when the other chronotypes have 5. So there's a lot of different things going on from a biological perspective. So once you actually know what your chronotype is, you can actually plan your day. So as an example, my lion over here, when he wakes up in the morning, his cortisol goes up. 90 minutes later, his cortisol is down. I can tell him exactly when, if he's a runner, when to go for a run to get his best run, because I know where his hormones are. But for somebody who's a bear, that time might be 90 minutes off. And for somebody who's a wolf, that time might be another 90 minutes off. Again, if you start to learn this about your clients, and by the way, about your employees, you can learn a lot. Like, do yourself a favor. If you've got a bunch of employees that are night owls like me, don't have a Monday morning meeting at 8 a.m. It isn't gonna work, right? If you work with your employees, I had one, if you guys are familiar with Bulletproof Coffee, so Dave Asprey's an old friend of mine. He actually chronotyped the entire company, and he had them put it on name tags. And so people knew when people were in a good mood, when people were in a bad mood. It actually worked out really perfect. All right, so when should we do some of the things that we want to do here in your industry? Well, number one, when should we run? Well, it depends upon your goals, right? So are you running for weight loss or are you running for performance? Because you have different biological rhythms that will do different things depending upon when you do it. So there's a fat burning rhythm, which is when you're doing fasting cardio within 30 minutes of waking up. Be sure to hydrate, please. If you're fasting and then doing cardio, please hydrate before. Then there's the performance rhythm. There was a British study in 2015 that found that the rise time relative to performance was very, very interesting. So when we start to look at early risers did a little bit better in the later morning. This is a performance only. This is not weight loss. Weight loss you can do just about whenever you want with an empty stomach on cardio because of that fat burning rhythm. So you see what I'm saying here is once you know your chronotype, you can decide what time of day to do something and get the result that you're looking for. So I put the results here in terms of what's the best run time for the different chronotypes. Obviously, you can experiment around. Now, some of you might be saying, Michael, I'm a lion. I'm not running at 5:30 in the afternoon. I run at 4:30 in the morning, right? That's probably what you were saying. Yeah, was it? Was I close? Yeah, I figured. So here's the thing. Here's the trick for lions. So for my lions out there who have a hard time staying up really late, if you go for a run between 4 and 5 in the afternoon, you'll be able to stay up till 9:30, no problem. Right? So again, depending upon what you're looking for, it can be very, very interesting. So now let's look at lifting. Lifting has got different rhythms for it as well. So depending upon your goals, is your goal muscle growth or is your goal performance, right? Because those are 2 different lifting goals for different people. So here's what's interesting is muscle growth does not matter for any chronotype, morning or evening. Doesn't matter. The studies show that you'll build as much muscle in the morning time as you will in the evening time. But for strength, which is different, that actually has a late afternoon when your temperature is high, so your body is warm, so you're less likely to injure yourself, right? And with cortisol low. Now people are saying, cortisol low? Michael, cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. That's the one that gives me the energy to do things. What's actually going on, and when you're looking for strength, is a cortisol to testosterone ratio. And so once you understand what that is, then you start to understand when, a little bit later in the day, you should be working out. There's also a pain rhythm. So when do people feel pain? Based on their chronotype. So morning types seem to be able to take more pain than any other chronotype. So you early risers, you not only do you feel the pain of the morning time, but you feel the pain of everything else, right? And so again, these are different potential lifting times that where your client or yourself, depending upon your chronotype, this is your optimal zone. This is where you're going to have your PRs, your personal records, or PBs, personal best. What about yoga and stretching? Let's not leave that out because that is absolutely a whole nother form. And guess what? It's a little bit different for that. There's a flexibility rhythm and there's something called a mind-body connection rhythm. So flexibility is basically whenever your body is at its warmest, right? So right after you get out of bed, right, your core body temperature has risen, and that's what's waking you up. So in some cases, yoga could actually be really good in the morning time. But as a general guideline, after your entire day has gone by, your body's much warmer, so it's going to be much better for you to be able to do yoga and stretching in the evening times, generally across chronotypes. But you can see here, I've given you that. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, I just looked this up this week, was a 2014 study, and what they did was they actually interviewed yogis. So for folks who don't know, these are like masters of yoga. They've been doing it for like 20-something years. And what they discovered was early rising yogis scored highest on conscientiousness and emotional stability, but all types, after time, increased their openness and creative thinking. So for anybody who knows a chronotype who needs to be a little bit more open-minded, get them to do some damn yoga. It'll work. It works across all the chronotypes. So I'm just using 3 simple examples here of areas within your industry that you can do this, but by the way, you can do this with almost anything. Now, I should do the just service by saying, okay, I've talked a lot about disordered sleep, but with the sleep disorders, should I go to a sleep doctor? When should we refer? When do I know these things? Here's the thing to basically think about. All these symptoms on the left side, these are the most obvious symptoms of sleep apnea. So it's daytime somnolence, it's morning headaches, irritability, inability to stay asleep, things like that. So if you notice things like that about your spouse, about your business partners, about your colleagues, about some of your clients, you could save their lives. No shit. You could save their lives if you get them a sleep study. I swear to you, it's crazy, but it really does work that way. And the science now is really decent. Also, by the way, insurance covers a tremendous amount of this. Insurance covers sleep apnea, all the treatments for it. In some cases, insomnia, but they don't do a fantastic job treating insomnia. So as a general guideline, if you think you have a sleep disorder, your insurance company more than likely pays for at least some testing. Also, by the way, since COVID, we now have these home tests. So believe it or not, for about $200, you don't even have to report it to your insurance company. You can order a study online, accurate equipment, shows up at your house, you wear it, it sends a signal to your phone, you throw the equipment away because it's disposable when it's done, and you've got your data. It's crazy how much more advanced it's getting in our field. So and by the way, don't think that every single patient ends up on this thing called the CPAP machine. So for folks, again, who don't know what this sleep apnea is, remember it's a closing of the throat. The main treatment for that is a CPAP machine, which is basically a mask on your face that blows air down your throat and opens up your airway. Now, to be fair, it sucks, right? It's like a hairdryer blowing up your nose all night long, right? There's nothing fun about that, I can assure you. But if you stop breathing in your sleep 100 times an hour and I stick that mask on you and now you only stop breathing 6 times an hour, your life has changed, okay? Now, but for people who have lighter apnea, let's say 10 times an hour, they don't necessarily want to sleep with the hairdryer face mask, Darth Vader Borg, as I've been told it's been called on any number of occasions. So now they actually have dental appliances. So they have dentists that can create, with sports guys and gals, they have an upper and a lower for the mouth guard. So the lower actually moves forward slightly, opens up the posterior airway space, and does the same thing as CPAP does without a mask on your face. So that's a lot more tolerable. There are better surgeries now. There's even something called Inspire. You've probably seen the commercials on TV where somebody takes a a little remote control and puts it over to the underneath their clavicle. So what's under there is a battery, and there's a small set of wires that goes up to the back of the tongue, and it sends a small electrical impulse to the tongue every time it slips a millimeter back to keep it forward, to keep you breathing. Okay, so it's shocking what we can do now. I know, it's right, it's crazy. What we can do now with sleep and sleep disorders. So I don't want anybody out there to think, I'm not going to do that. Oh no, I'm not getting a mask on my face. Trust me on this one. Let's see how bad it is first. Let's see what's going on, and let's see if we can figure you out, because it's probably not as bad as you think. So I've talked a little bit about sleep apnea, and I've talked a little bit about, I actually was ahead of slide, about what's kind of going on with apnea. Again, this is definitely something that you're going to talk about with your clientele, but there are some behaviors that are really good that you can do with yourself, your family, your clients, and teach them all really, really well. But the single best way to improve the quality of sleep is exercise. There's no question. Like, the data is very, very clear about this. Now, if you can eliminate caffeine, you're going to get even better sleep, right? If you don't drink too close to bedtime, sorry, I didn't mean to break your, if you don't drink alcohol too close to bedtime, then, maybe that will help my sleep. There's a lot of little hacks that you can do along. I get it, it's not so much fun, right? Michael, I want to have coffee until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Michael, I want to have, 4 tequilas on a Friday and enjoy myself. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying there's consequences, right? And so depending upon what you want to do the next day, it can be very, very interesting. This is much better what I call sleep hygiene. When you've heard about sleep hygiene in the past, it's usually, make your bedroom dark, make it quiet, make it cold. No shit, right? Like, this isn't rocket science. What I'm talking about is having some structure to your evening before you go to bed. Because most people don't have any structure. And when you don't have any structure, things don't get done. And when you get nothing done, you look up and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you've been scrolling on TikTok or binge watching Game of Thrones or whatever. And now you got to try to fall asleep, which is not going to be the easiest thing in the world to do. Sleep habits definitely matter. This is really interesting. 89% of adults changed their sleep habits during COVID. 89%. Isn't that amazing? It's crazy, right? 77% of people said going to bed later, sleeping less, sleeping more in front of a screen, using a screen in the bedroom. Now, I have to do one thing and say, I'm also the only sleep doctor in the universe that says it's okay to fall asleep with the television on. I'm going to explain the story. Thank you for the vote of confidence. I appreciate that. So when I met my wife, I had gotten my master's, I was getting my PhD, taking the boards, all that kind of fun stuff. And I said, hon, you can't sleep with the TV on all night. I'm going to be a sleep doctor. I'm going to fix that. How many of you have tried to fix something in your significant other? How many have done it and it's worked? Right? 0, right? So I took the television out of the bedroom. You know what she told me to do? Get my ass out of the bedroom. I learned really quickly that if I wanted to be in the bedroom, there better be a TV. So then I said, no problem. I'm going to put the TV back in, and I studied her. So this happens a lot in my house. I study my children's sleep. I try to study my dog's sleep. I study all this stuff because I'm a sleep nerd. And what I discovered was it wasn't actually what she was watching because her eyes are closed. She's listening out of what I call the corner of her ear, right? And it's like an old episode of Seinfeld or something like that. And it's just enough to prevent her from having what she calls monkey mind, right? I probably shouldn't do this when I'm talking about my wife, right? Probably not. That was my second best joke. So at the end of it all, during the pandemic, we actually had the opportunity to all get great sleep, and almost nobody did, right? 23% increase in sleeping pill prescriptions during COVID, 18% increase in alcohol consumption. I think it was 19% increase in caffeine consumption. And people were just rolling out of bed, throwing on a ball cap and getting on Zoom, right? I mean, come on. Like, it was unbelievable. So people would stay up late binge watching, because there was so much content that was coming out right then. right? And then wine time seemed to show up earlier and earlier during the day, right? Wine time went from 5 to 4 to 3. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? So what I like to tell people, and I set one actual physical alarm in my bedroom because it forces me to walk in there and then I remember, oh, it's getting time to go to bed. And then I take that hour and I chop it up into 3 20-minute segments. 20 minutes for just stuff that has to get done, right? So that's like finding shoes, sports equipment, getting backpacks together for school, right? Getting a presentation together, maybe a last minute email, but nothing particularly stressful. 20 minutes for hygiene, right? Wash your face, brush your teeth, take a shower, take a bath, what have you. Oh, by the way, for anybody out there who wears makeup, you should try removing your makeup at around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, especially if you're at home. Because otherwise, when you're in the bathroom and it's 10:30 at night, got all the lights on and you're really trying. I wear makeup a lot on TV. And so I've done this many times where you forget you're wearing makeup. And then all of a sudden my wife is like, Michael, it'd be nice if you took the makeup off before you came to bed. Oh God. But you're basically bathed in blue light, which tells your brain not to produce melatonin. So if you do wear makeup, if you take it off a little bit earlier, it'll be a lot better. And then the final 20 minutes is for some type of meditation, relaxation, prayer. It can be whatever you want it to be. But folks, you gotta have runway to land the plane, right? Sleep is not an on-off switch. It's like slowly pulling your foot off the gas and slowly putting your foot on the brake. There's a process that should occur, and it should take about 15 or 20 minutes for the average person to fall asleep. Now, when I was lucky enough back in, long time ago, 2004, I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she turned to me and she said, Stedman falls asleep in 1:27. I was like, that ain't good. She was like, what are you talking about? I said, he's obviously sleep deprived. A normal person, it should take him 8, 10, 12 minutes, and she loved that idea. About 10 years later, I met Stedman. He wasn't really happy with me. He knew exactly who I was. He walked right up to me. He said, you're that sleep doctor guy, aren't you? I was like, okay, not going to be good. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the stuff you have to think about. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I'll answer any type of question you want. I don't do dream interpretation. I'm just letting you know now. But I am taking a class on dream therapy where we use the dream as a therapeutic space for some people with PTSD, which has been a really fascinating journey. Has anybody got a question?